In the year 2000, this country brought in about 180,000 metric tons of palm oil. In 2024, the last full year I've got numbers for, we brought in 1.9 million. 10 times more palm oil in one generation. And a good share of it landed in exactly the places on a label where milk fat used to sit. 10 times more. I want to show you something in the freezer aisle. Not a brand, not a scandal, a word. Pick up any carton in there and look at the front. Not the picture, not the flavor, not the name of the company. Look at the small print sitting right underneath the brand name. Usually in a plain typeface, usually about a quarter the size of everything else. On some cartons, that print says ice cream. On a whole lot of others, it says frozen dairy dessert. Same freezer, same shelf, same price, near enough, different food. That small print is not marketing. It's a legal statement of identity, and the company didn't choose the words. Federal Rule 21 CFR 135.110 says if you want to call something ice cream, it's got to carry at least 10% milk fat and weigh at least 4.5 pounds to the gallon. Fall under that, and you have to call it something else. Frozen dairy dessert is the something else. It's the manufacturer telling you, in the smallest legal type available, that what's in the carton didn't clear the bar. Now here's the part that put me on this. In January of this year, the federal butterfat price, that's what a dairy farmer actually gets paid per pound for the fat in his milk, was $1.45. A year before that, January of 2025, it was $2.95. Cut in half in 12 months. Same cows, same barn, same 5 a.m. And that same February, the average retail price of a pound of butter in this country was $4.31. Let me say what I'm not saying, because it matters more than anything else in this video. I'm not going to sit here and tell you palm oil is poison. It isn't. I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a food scientist, and I'm not going to tell any grown adult what to put in their body. Palm oil is a legal, common, widely eaten fat, and it's in a lot of food you've enjoyed your whole life. I'm also not telling you this is in every product. It isn't. Plenty of what's on that shelf is exactly what it says it is, made by people doing it right. And I'm not telling you somebody is hiding it from you in the ingredients. In the United States, federal labeling rules require each individual fat and oil to be declared by its own specific name. Palm oil has to say palm oil. It can't hide behind the words vegetable oil the way it used to. So the back of the package is telling you the truth. Here's what I am telling you. Nobody has to announce a reformulation. Nobody sends you a letter. A recipe changes on a Tuesday, the legal noun on the front of the box changes with it. The brand name and the colors and the shelf position stay exactly the same. And the only trace of the whole thing is a line in small type that most of us have never once read. I can't tell you how many pounds of American butterfat got swapped for imported palm oil last year because nobody publishes that number. What I can tell you is what came in the door, what it costs, what the law allows, and what it looks like on my end of it. My name's Roy, third generation on 240 acres in southwest Wisconsin, in the driftless, ridge and coulee country, the part of the state the glaciers went around instead of over. My grandfather bought this place in 1946 when he came home. My dad Raymond worked it from '61. I came on full-time in 1982, 19 years old, because Dad's back went out and there wasn't anybody else. I milked cows twice a day for 37 years, 84 Holsteins at the peak. I sold the milking herd in 2019. The same year, Wisconsin lost 818 dairy farms, better than 2 a day. I was one of the 818. So understand my position here. I don't get a milk check anymore. Nobody pays me a nickel, whether a factory uses butterfat or palm oil or lard. And it goes further than that, because I still farm corn and soybeans soybean oil is one of the fats competing for that same slot on the ingredient panel. Soybean oil has been running around 64 to 70 cents a pound. Palm's been closer to 50. My own crop can't undercut it either. So I'm not out here defending my paycheck. I don't have one in this fight. I've got nothing left to sell you. Here's what I'm going to show you in order. What the swap actually saves in cents per pound with the real numbers on both sides. What the law requires and what it quietly permits. And then the check, the 4-second thing you can do this week in your own grocery store. And here's the part that ought to bother you a little. Every bit of this is legal. Not one company involved has broken a rule. Nobody had to coordinate anything. The only public record of a change that alters what you're eating is a noun in 6-point type that the law requires them to print and permits them to print small. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll spot it in about 4 seconds. If a farmer telling you what's actually in your groceries is worth your time, hit subscribe and the thumbs up. It's the only way I know that any of this is landing. Now, here's what most folks get wrong. People read the brand and skip the noun. That's the whole error. We've been trained for 50 years that the brand is the promise. You buy the name you grew up with and you assume the name means the recipe. It doesn't. The name is the one thing on that package that legally never has to change. The noun is where the law lives. Ice cream is a defined food. Frozen dairy dessert is a legal category for the things that miss the definition, and it has no minimum milk fat at all, none. And it's where vegetable oils, more air, and different emulsifiers can come in. Milk chocolate is a defined food too, under 21 CFR 163. And in this country, you cannot put outside vegetable fats in a product you're calling chocolate, not a little. So when the cocoa butter comes out and palm or palm kernel goes in, the word chocolate has to come off the front and get replaced with chocolatey, or chocolate flavored, or chocolate coating, or made with chocolate. Those aren't cute marketing words. Every one of them is a legal confession. Margarine's the same story. Under 21 CFR 166.110, margarine has to be at least 80% fat. Drop below 80 and you can't call it margarine, so it becomes a vegetable oil spread. And butter, real butter, is defined in federal law going back to 1923. Anything that isn't it has to be called something that isn't it. Whipped cream, whipped topping, cream, non-dairy creamer. Every one of those pairs is a fork in the road, and the sign is posted, and almost nobody's looking at it. So why is this happening? Because of a spreadsheet. Let me walk you through the actual numbers, because they're not complicated, and once you've seen them, you can't unsee them. Palm oil this summer has been running around $1,100 a metric ton. A metric ton is 2,200 pounds, so call it 50 cents a pound. It was around that a year ago. It was around that 2 years ago. It moves, but it moves like a barge. Butterfat on the farmer's end, $2.95 in January of 2025, $2.84 in July of 25, $2.19 in September, $1.83 in October, $1.71 in November, $1.58 in December, $1.45 in January of this year, then back up to $1.67 in July. Now put yourself behind the desk. You've got to price a product a year out. One of your inputs sits at 50 cents and barely moves. The other one runs from $1.45 to $2.95 and back. And you cannot predict which end of that it'll be sitting at when your product hits the shelf. Cocoa butter's worse. Cocoa futures ran to nearly $13,000 a ton in late 2024, and we're still $5,000 or $6,000 this spring, way above anything those cost models were built on. And the palm doesn't need refrigeration. It doesn't go rancid in a warehouse in Memphis in August. It doesn't have to be picked up in a stainless tank every other morning. And it has never once, not one time in the history of the world, demanded to be milked at 5 a.m. on Christmas morning in a January wind coming up the coulee. That's the swap. It isn't a conspiracy. It's a spreadsheet decision. Nobody had to coordinate anything. Somebody just ran the numbers, and the numbers said, swap it. My dad Raymond used to say, the milk check was the only paycheck in America where they tell you what you earned after you've already spent it. He wasn't bitter about it. He just thought a man ought to know which side of the table he was sitting on. The man who really understood it was Merle. Merle hauled the milk on our 3-county route from '79 to 2016. 37 years of pulling into yards at 4 in the morning. Merle could tell you which farms were going under before the farmers themselves would admit it, and he did it off tank volume. He'd say, that fella's tank is down 1,100 pounds from spring, and he hasn't told anybody yet. He was right basically every time. Merle used to tell me the trouble with our end of the business is that we sell a thing that spoils to people who sell a thing that doesn't. If you'd rather just buy the real thing, I wrote down how. Where to find the farms, what to ask them, what a quarter of beef actually costs you a pound once it's in your freezer. It's called Buy It From the Farm. Links down in the description. Now let me put the hard numbers on the table so you're not taking my word for any of it. Palm oil coming into the United States, USDA's own figures, 182,000 metric tons in the year 2000, 952,000 by 2007, 1.9 million in 2024. That's roughly 4 billion pounds a year of a fat that does not grow anywhere in this country. On the labeling side, 21 CFR 101.4, paragraph B, 14. Every individual fat and oil gets declared by its specific common name. Good rule. But read further down the same paragraph and you find this. Where fats aren't the predominant ingredient, a manufacturer can list oils that may not actually be in there using the words contains one or more of the following. So you can be looking at a panel that says vegetable oil shortening contains one or more of the following: cottonseed oil, palm oil, soybean oil. And the honest answer to what's in your hand today is nobody outside that plant knows. That's not a loophole somebody snuck in. It's printed right there in the regulation. And it exists so companies can shift between oils by the week as prices move. On the identity side, the ice cream standard and the chocolate standard are the two I already gave you. And there's a documented case worth knowing because it's the clearest one on the shelf. Breyers, which is Unilever, moved a large share of its lineup out of the ice cream category and into frozen dairy dessert. The company's own explanation to reporters was that those products don't carry enough fat to be called ice cream and aren't light enough to be called light ice cream. That's not me alleging anything. That's a company stating what the label already says. And on my end of it, American milk production went from 171 billion pounds in 2004 to 226 billion in 2024, a 32% increase according to USDA's own Economic Research Service. This past February, the national herd was 9.62 million head, 211,000 more cows than the year before. This spring, there were reports out of California, the biggest dairy state there is, of milk being dumped because there wasn't processing capacity to take it. More milk than the system can handle, and 4 billion pounds a year of a fat coming in from the other side of the planet. Now let me be fair to the other side, because if I'm not, you shouldn't believe the rest of it either. Palm oil is genuinely, seriously good at what it does. Per acre, it yields more oil than any other oil crop on Earth. It isn't close. It's solid at room temperature without being hydrogenated, and that turned out to matter a great deal. Because when the FDA determined back in 2015 that partially hydrogenated oils were no longer generally recognized as safe and gave industry a few years to get them out, palm is a big part of what industry reached for. So some of that 4 billion pounds isn't replacing butterfat at all. It's replacing something the government was right to take off the shelf. That's a real point, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Here's another one. American butter demand is strong. People are buying more butter and more cheese, not less. And the export side had a good year. Whole milk fat is not being run out of the American diet. The substitution I'm describing is category specific. Coatings, toppings, creamers, fillings, frozen desserts, the baked goods aisle. It's not everywhere. Anyone who tells you it's everywhere is selling you something. On the land, too, I'll give ground. The expansion of oil palm did take a bite out of Indonesian forest. A peer-reviewed count put it at about 9.8 million hectares of forest lost from 2001 to 2019, with a bit over 3 million of that ending up as oil palm. But the same monitoring work shows deforestation for industrial palm dropped to roughly 32,000 hectares a year in the 2018 to 2022 stretch, about 18% of what it was at the peak. And it fell while production kept rising. Somebody over there is doing something right. I'd be a liar to leave that out. So here's what dairy fat does that palm can't, and it's not sentiment about cows. Walk my place with me. There's maybe 90 acres here I can put a planter on. The rest is ridge and side hill and coulee bottom, too steep to row crop without watching the topsoil go down the valley the first hard June rain. But grass grows on it, hay grows on it, and a cow will stand on ground that can't grow a bushel of anything a human being can eat and turn it into fat and protein. That's not romance. That's the only technology anybody's ever found for getting food off that particular hillside. Palm oil is a monocrop on flat tropical ground 8,000 miles from here, and it can't do a thing with my North 40. And when the decision gets made 1 million times over, this is what it looks like on the ground. Wisconsin had 9,695 dairy farms 10 years ago. On the 1st of January this year, 5,115. 233 of them gone in the last 12 months alone. The cow numbers held. The milk went up. This state made a record 32.35 billion pounds in 2024. It's the farms that went away, and with them, the feed dealer and the hoof trimmer and the 2 milk routes that turned into 1. Merle's route doesn't exist. Nobody replaced Merle. They just stopped needing the road. So this week, here's what I want you to do. It'll take you 4 seconds a package, and you don't have to buy a thing differently unless you want to. Front of the package, directly under the brand name, smallest print on the panel. Read the noun: ice cream or frozen dairy dessert, milk chocolate or chocolatey, chocolate flavored, chocolate coating, made with chocolate, butter or vegetable oil spread, whipped cream or whipped topping, cream or creamer. That noun is the manufacturer's own sworn statement about which food it is, and it changes the moment the recipe does. Then, if you want the confirmation, flip it over and run your eye down the fats. You're looking for palm oil, palm kernel oil, palm fruit oil, fractionated palm kernel oil, and the phrase contains one or more of the following. In a real chocolate, you'll see cocoa butter and chocolate liqueur, or cocoa mass, and no vegetable oil doing the structural work. In real ice cream, you'll see cream and milk up top. And check the spread while you're standing there. Butter's been averaging around $4.30 a pound nationally this year. Compare it to what's next to it, and then decide for yourself. I'm not telling you which one to put in the cart. Some weeks, the cheaper one is the right answer for a household, and anybody who's never had to do that math out loud in a grocery aisle can keep their opinion. Tell me in the comments what state you're in and what a pound of butter costs where you shop. I want to see the spread across this country because I guarantee it's wider than any national average lets on. I read every one of these, and if what you'd rather do is skip the aisle entirely, buy the milk, the beef, the eggs from the person who actually raised them, that's the book. Buy it from the farm. Where the farms are, what to ask when you call, what a quarter of beef really runs you per pound once it's cut and wrapped and in your freezer. $29.99, links in the description. One last thing, and then I'll let you go. Merle told me something in the cab of his truck around 2010 that I didn't understand until years after I sold my herd. He said, "Roy, they'll never take anything away from you all at once. They'll take it in an amount so small that arguing about it makes you look unreasonable. Then they'll do it again next year." He wasn't talking about palm oil, he was talking about hauling rates. But it's the same arithmetic, and it works the same on your end of the counter as it did on mine. Nothing on that shelf changed by an amount worth making a fuss over. It just changed, and then it changed again. And the name on the front stayed the same the whole way through, so nobody would have to notice. Read the noun. That's the whole ask, and it's shorter than most of what comes out of my mouth. Somebody grew it, somebody changed it. Nobody told you, now you know.